Hello, everybody. This is Glory. Welcome to Alpha Womb. So, today in the series of Kali, uh, I will be speaking about how the great protectress mother, the divine mother, the sovereign mother, who had time immemorial protected the land of our country, got reduced to a relic and uh, got associated with uh, you know very derogatory names like associated with her, fear invoked into her presence. And what was the source of all of this? How did we reduce the mother to a monster and called her savage and witchy? In all of these things still exist. I really get irked when uh, when when my friends visit such temple and come back to me and just uh, any temple of Kali, uh, ferocious forms of Kali, they visit and they come back and tell me, "Oh, I did not feel afraid there, as people say. I just felt very motherly." This this statement. Do you know how how many years people have taken to instill this fear within people about the mother, the great mother? And Devi is not, Kali is not an idea, especially Kali is not an idea imagined by distant theologians and feared by uh, outsiders like us. Okay, so she was once upon a time lived with, fed into images and ideals, called by names, beautiful names. And she was also given hymns and festivals were crafted around around speciality of the goddess, and she was remembered as a memory. And then later, voices like my friends who associate Kali as, fear and very scary kind of ideas, uh, and some more than often impure also. So these later voices started calling her impure, you know, witchy, monstrous. They weren't only insulting a goddess, they were insulting every place that had survived because the Great Mother was invoked to protect the land. They were insulting uh, this very emotion of the land, of the people who still believed in her. So this I feel is not a violence of war. This is a violence of a story, a violence of naming, a violence of other people's fear, understanding power with their own disgust. So when did the great protectress mother was reduced to being called as a witch? You know, so I always feel, why is true power always misunderstood, feared, scared, and flinched at? How did the goddess kings, fed before wars, became the poster woman for black magic? These are questions. These are very, very deep questions we have stopped asking before entering any space, right? You you only now know the exteriors of the temple, the address of the temple, but you are never interested in the source of the presence within the temple. What does she mean? Where did she come from? Why is she called so? And that is where I feel, forget sense, common sense is lost. The sixth sense of Kali will never be within you if you keep on going, reducing her into such fear based names and fear based understanding and fear based worship. Even worship of her is fear based. It's so appalling to see people like that. So when did we started to, scare kids with the compassionate mother of all beings? Strange, right? So she was pushed by people. She was pushed by people who each had a reason to fear her. This is what I believe. She was pushed to the edges, and people who feared her translated her in their own language of disgust, calling her a monster, calling her a witch, calling her whatnot. So when tradition segregated into clean and unclean, pure and impure, the polished, the priestly, and the so called respectable people, sect of the community, rose to the center. And what they did to her was her worship with blood, with skull, with dangerous intimacies of body in the cremation ground was merely was called impure and pushed to the margins. So they did not, at this point also, they did not completely destroy her existence. What they did was they pushed Kali worshippers and Kali as an iconography to the edge of the community where everything would be feared around. So I believe this tradition was too honest to not completely destroy her, just move her to the edges where power could still use her in private and disown her in the public by segregating pure and impure for other people. Then came the colonials, even worse. This is where horror movies started. This is the part where you watch the horror movies with her image in the background, and some very dangerous tantric chanting aloud her mantras as if the world will fall apart post the rituals. This is a part where the colonials came in, who had no description in their mind of what to make sense of such a powerful and fierce imagery of Kali. For a goddess standing in the grammar of the cremation ground, uh, and all they did was they had no category for her except horror movies and obscene devil worship. So this is what they had this kind of a box for her. So people had only kept her in very derogatory boxes because, like I said, power is always true power, not the performative. True power has always, time immemorial, misunderstood. So Shakti worship, if you look around, is always hidden, done in very private areas. And what you think as Shakti is the brighter side of Shakti, but the true power, you only know how to keep Lakshmi Saraswati, and not that they're any less powerful, but because you couldn't see Kali in the most fierce, naked idol in front, as a society, you made her wear saris and you created her into very domesticated ideas of your own self, not her. So, what did the colonial do? The colonial wrote her into their books as a proof of everything they had come to civilize in India. And they could only see a nightmare in Kali. So then they thought, why not make profits out of this and put her in the category of horror movies in their horror movies? So then, films after films, series of movies casted Kali, casted Kali as the villain background. The evil tantric chanting something aloud in front of her image, giving an idea of demon worship or black magic. So her face in the movie was almost used as a syntax of something terrible was about to, as if something terrible was about to happen. An entire civilization, an entire civilization's most sovereign protector was now reduced to a jump scare moment. This is how many people will now understand Kali. This is how many people will meet her now, not as a mother who guards the country, not as the but as the monster in the dark room, face in the movie. So to the orthodox, she became impurity, but to the colonial, she became savagery. To cinema, she became uh, fear for profit. You know, but to the ones who walked, but to the ones who walked to her in the dark and were not uh, turned away, she still remained as the mother. To the sadhakas, she still remained as the mother. So notice what these each of these people had in common: someone who did not belong to the encounter, uh, of Kali. And that's why they decided what her power meant to them. To the priest, she, to the priest who found her impure, to the colonizer who found her obscene, witchy, and to the filmmaker who found her profitable. So none of them were women, and at the end of everything, none of them were the hunted also. And none of them were the seeker who came and emptied the naked truth of Kali. None of them ever fed her, none of them ever stood where places uh, were merely protected just by chanting her names. They only named her with their own fears, and only fears wearing her face became her identity. So they made her a monster on a screen, and the screen just had lights. on a wall. They still contained her image. They never once touched the thing itself. They never once touched the idea, the source of Kali, the strength of Kali, the story of Kali. This was a violence of story of the great mother reduced to the relics. So the label was never what she was. Instead, it is only what she is called by people who were frightened by her power. And or people who learned they could make a living out of frightening other people uh, by giving her by by frightening other people by giving her such names, right? and how did and how did I see her? How did I find her presence in my feelings, in my ideas? I always feel she's the most sexiest woman I have ever come across. She's the most fierce woman that I have ever seen. I have not once come across anybody as remotely as fierce as her, as compassionate as her. So her presence in my life shifted completely the energy of my life without me once, you know, taking a notice of it. And by the time I noticed, everything was changed. I was a changed person. People were different around me. The toxic ones weren't around me anymore. Every single strand of my life was changed. Slowly, subtly, gracefully. There was bliss, there was happiness. How can you reduce something so powerful, so compassionate as a monster? You cannot, right? That is a violence of name, of story, of identity. So the great sovereign mother who cannot be reduced to wifehood, to uh, to anything that they thought was an idea of domesticating, was thereby, like they do with women these days also, was thereby reduced to very derogatory names. Fear, generation of fear instilled into the idea of the ideal of Kali, that people still are get scared to enter her space. And that that is something I want to give her back. I want to give her back her identity. I want to give her back her dignity. And this is my whole idea of this pursuit in which I'm making the contents, because I want people to know that she is not what you were fed into, what the system, what the society, what the matrix has fed into. There is greater truth of her source that you need to know as uh, as you stay in the country seat protected without you even knowing, being aware of her. So every time I stood witnessing her, everything arrives at once. The grief of it, everything, the grief of it and the truth of it together. That how her identity was of power, was stripped of her by each of the people that I mentioned. And they were completely responsible for a child to flinch at the ideal of Kali, to fear anyone who chanted her mantras, or entered the spaces of Kali. And thinking about what was done to her, the one who was everywhere at every uh, fever night, in every grieving mother, in every hunted woman, Kali refused to die quietly. She screamed. She protected king who needed, and she made sure to make kings who needed to be made larger than their fears to come to her space. So every single one who took her also, who took from her, also cut her down name day by day, name by name, cut her down name by name, century by century, and tried to kept her on the margins of the society where she was considered impure until, you know, they made the society fear her so much that until her own devotees also half believed these these fears associated with Kali, these slanders associated with her name, her presence. But she has not changed a bit. Let me tell you this. She has not changed a bit. And the joke beneath all of this still lies. The joke beneath all of this is it never worked out. Not even once. It never worked out. All these propaganda, these fears, this instilling uh, just never worked out. Not for a single day. She was still alive the entire time. Every time a sadhaka believes in her, she is still alive. The sadhaka makes her alive as they completely see her for what she is. And this is why the initiative by my guru, the Kaliputra mission, is so much all about Ghar Ghar Kali and Har Ghar Kali, because she refuses, she as a deity refuses to be worshipped in private and dishonored in public. She wants to, she does not wants to be now stand at the margins of the society. She wants to be a part of every house. And 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 one who understands this will defy the propaganda that reduced her name by name, century by century, and made a child flinch at the idol of Kali. Just the way they do with the women who are powerful and have opinions in our society. So I hope we pay heed into these sort of name associated with her, and we understand that true power will always be misunderstood and misplaced and tried to be domesticated. So give those name back to these powerful entities, to the powerful Kali or the powerful woman in your life. Give her back her name. See her for what she is truly, not for what you feared in her, and started giving her names. Thank you so much.